Okay, and welcome to the second installment for photography class. Now, today we are going to be taking a deep breath and kind of backing up a little bit. Now, as you might remember, our last assignment had to do with composite images and color correction and stuff like that. So we're going to put that on hold because we are going to talk about that, but I think it's more important that we get into the rhythm of the class once again. So what I wanted to do is introduce the topic of photojournalism. Bear with me here. There we go. Photojournalism. And so photojournalism covers a lot of things, and really we're not going to say that much about it today, except to go back to its basics. Now, journalism is basically telling a story. We think of it as news, reporting what you see, that sort of thing. And so we're going to say that on one side of the spectrum, of journalism, we have professional news. People who are paid to do this. And we are used to this. But on the other side of the spectrum, we have First Amendment journalism. Way, way, way back to the founding of our country, where basically people told the stories that they saw around them and they shared them in kind of a communal fashion. And so when they did that, there weren't necessarily just reporters. There were people that happened to be there that posted their information. And so anybody can be a citizen journalist. In fact, today in the 21st century, that's becoming more and more common. All of these YouTube things, all of this Pinterest and all this other stuff, that's basically a kind of citizen journalism. But what we want to do here is take it kind of into the art realm. This would literally be somewhere in the middle where sometimes we're not necessarily covering events, but we're trying to give an impression of what we feel about what we see, what journalism means. And we can even say that this doesn't necessarily even have to be in the realm of journalism, but we can look at it as photo art because a lot of photographers publish these sorts of things. For example, I showed you a book earlier in class, The Family of Man. That would be an example of a book of photos on some kind of a theme. And so, if we're going to talk about photojournalism, let's talk about the context of the class. Basically, I'm asking you to create another set of pictures. So, lemons to lemonade. So, we are currently experiencing history. And that is not an exaggeration. I have been around for a lot longer than you, and I have never seen anything like this before. Basically, now suddenly we are sequestered in our homes. We are sequestered away from our resources that we currently like. Our lives are being interrupted. The entire great work of society has been temporarily shut down, hopefully temporarily. And so there's a lot of feelings that evokes. And so what I want you to do is explore those and try to make a photograph that captures what you see. So lemons to lemonade. Be inspired by what is happening around you. Now, it could be you're seeing something that by its nature is interesting. Maybe you see reactions. Maybe you see people wearing masks. Maybe that's something that inspires you. Take a word. A word is inspiration. Now, we'll talk about that in a minute. So a word can mean anything. In fact, last semester we had a whole assignment based on this, where someone was providing us with words and they wanted pictures to match them. Inspirational words for inspirational pictures. Here, we may be using some dark colors. For example, the word isolation. Isolation can evoke some kind of dark moods here. Quarantine, that's another word. Sequestered. So those are words we're starting with. That I put the word isolation into Google Images. Now this is actually a neat way to get started. Look at some of the interpretations. Look at this one, for example, an empty chair, and see we can see that a little bit closer. That may be how you interpret the term isolation. Why a pink background? Why a white chair? I guess that's up to you. This might be another interpretation of that. Someone who is alone. Maybe that's how you're seeing this. I'm not sure if that one makes sense, but maybe it does. Isolation. So it could be that you need models or actors. It could be that you're doing this some other way. But there's all kinds of possible interpretations of this. Of a still life, Let's see what we got here. A still life, something like that. You can use effects if you want to. I'm leaving this wide open. And so that is what I want you to start with. Let's try one other before we're done here. If I were to say, instead of isolation, quarantine, let's say I were to do that. Now that gives us different options. It could be you've got something like that going on. It could be you've got something like that if you can find it. And obviously, this isn't funny. This is a scary thing. But there are different ways that we can interpret it. And so try to interpret it in some kind of a way that makes sense for your situation. Maybe you're not seeing images like this. Hopefully you're not. And so that is what we want to get started doing. So let's do it. Basically, what I want you to do is to create 5 images. I want you to test your equipment. Whatever equipment you're using, maybe you're using the same equipment you used before, great. Maybe you're using different equipment. Maybe this will be an opportunity to get comfortable with what you're doing. Test your discipline. And one of the things that I've noticed earlier in class in previous examples, that we have people coming in with like 40 images, and they're trying to pick out, while in class, the ones that they want to show. I think it's better that we only submit 5. Just 5. And basically, those are the ones that you have picked out from the ones that you show. So just so you understand, we're in the same boat here. When I was showing you my images of the Biltmore estate and things like that, there were originally over 100 images there. All you were seeing was the ones that I had selected from each role as important, and then aren't necessarily bad, but they're not good enough to show. Okay, let's have an art show. This is where it's going to get interesting. Let's shoot for Tuesday at 12:30. Tuesday at 12:30, we're going to try to go live. So that means between now and then, I have to make sure that you know how to do this if you don't already. And we're going to try to access the basically the Blackboard Ultra program and actually meet together. And I will need all your images by Friday so that I can have them all set up. And then we can look at them together and you can all comment on your wonderful work. And so that's why we're giving them plenty of time. We got all weekend to prepare for this. All weekend and part of the next week, we will make this work. Okay, so while you're doing this, one other thing we got to establish: make sure that you're using appropriate social distance. You may have to go outside to get images. Try not to expose yourself to situations where you could get sick. Try not to touch surfaces or touch other people if you can. Try to maintain a 6-foot distance to whatever you're photographing, but that doesn't mean that you can't either work indoors or work in some sort of a setting that is safe, as long as you are keeping that in mind. Okay, so that is it. That is what we're going to do this week. So think about that and try to be inspired. And we will see you soon.